Whenever you want. All right. Well, obviously, my next guest needs no introduction. Dan Pardi is super excited that he agreed to come and talk with us about the future of wellness, which I believe is perineum sunning and injectable tracking, right?
It's all that. It's highly experimental, novel drugs, and esoteric, let's say, health tips. Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here. I really appreciate it. It is auspicious that I am actually getting a chance to talk today, because it is exactly 1 year ago that I defended my PhD. And not only is it the exact day, but it's, I think, the exact time, given the time difference in the Netherlands. And I did, yeah, I did this to an absolutely packed house, which was great. This guy was in the wrong room, but he was too polite to leave. So I expect the same courtesies from you for not leaving after I start. I decided to go back and do a PhD later in life. I completed a master's in exercise science about 15 years before that. And between the time I started my PhD and finished my master's, I had been working in health science and promotion exclusively. So if I'm in the field of health, I love this saying. Beginning of wisdom is the definition of terms. So I'm working in this field of health. What is health? Providing a good definition for health has been notoriously challenging for millennia. Definitions have been offered. A lot of them either incomplete or so general that they leave you feeling like it's really not helping you get much of a direction about what health is or what you could do about it. But in the mid-1990s, the World Health Organization, after several earlier attempts in the century, provided a more complete definition. And they defined it in part as the body, a body or system's ability to withstand challenges to its integrity. And this aspect of health speaks to the resilience aspect of this term. We can all imagine that if we picture, let's say, you getting sick, and a young person getting sick, getting over it, and they're right back on track. And an older person might get the same bug, and it could kill them. Or we have a broken arm, and how well you heal is a sign of your health. But the definition didn't stop there. They also defined health as a resource for life, a fuel of sorts for helping you achieve your aspirations and your goals. And this aspect of health speaks to the performance aspect of this term. It is this aspect of health that I think is most underappreciated in today's world. I also believe that connecting to this specific idea is fundamental for individuals to promote real health in today's world. So if health is resilience and performance, then the modern healthcare system must be oriented to promote these objectives, right? Not exactly. For instance, the US healthcare system is mostly designed to intervene in the event of a health crisis. Why? Because it originated in the 1800s, where we made revolutionary progress towards understanding how to address one of the biggest threats in recorded human history to humans, which is infectious disease. And so our healthcare system became married to a burgeoning pharmaceutical industry that impressively created these different tools that could counteract infection that led to suffering and early death. And this all seemed massively successful. In the United States in 1910, the average life expectancy was 47 years. And in 2016, it was 79 years. That's a 70% increase in life expectancy in barely a century. Bravo. We have to applaud that monumental improvement in human health. But the success led to a societal delusion that all of health was just like our relationship with infections and even a broken bone, that health and sickness are binary states. The delusion looks something like this. You're healthy until you get sick. Then you go to your doctor, and they make you better. Now, this all led to this idea that we could entirely outsource this fundamental aspect of life to an expert. But health isn't a binary state. Rather, it's a continuum. Let's say that a diagnosable chronic disease starts here on the health continuum. The conventional medical system will mostly aim to diagnose this disease as early as possible, let's say here. And in the best case scenario, with our tools today, medical intervention in the form of pills and surgery can bring you to a slightly better place than before. But the reality is that more often than not, we just see a slowing of the decline from where you are. So we've achieved all this additional life by handling infectious disease, but now we're burdened with chronic disease. All that additional life, societally, is burdened with chronic disease. And our healthcare system has not been set up to address this. So what is chronic disease? Essentially, it stems from the accumulated biological damage done in the course of living. This damage happens to all of us in the process of getting older, but at different rates, depending on how we live, including all of our behaviors and all of our exposures and even our relationships to others. I use this fish tank metaphor here because anyone who has ever owned one knows how critical it is to maintain that internal balance in order for the fish to thrive. And we are no different. Today's agenda for the rest of the talk is as follows. I'll be talking about the millennial canary in the coal mine. Who flies the helicopter is the next section. Actual health system. The changing landscape of life. An archetype for modern health. And finally, self-mastery and effective relationships to experts. Okay. There's been more technological innovation in the last 20 years than in all time before. Now, currently, there are almost 73 million millennials living in the United States. A millennial is a person born between 1981 and 1996. Millennials developed in this rapidly changing world. And according to a Blue Cross Blue Shield analysis of 55 million health records, that's 75% of all millennials, so an impressive amount of data here. Millennials experience a major decline in health, starting at the age 27. And when they look at millennial health at age 35, they found that they have a higher prevalence for nearly all top 10 health impairing conditions than did the generation before them, so Gen Xers, when they were 35 years old. That is a stunning decline in population health in only one generation. The pace of health impairment is inversely correlated with environmental and lifestyle change. And if you want a deep dive into what I think is the most plausible theory as to why, I point you to my conversation with Professor Michael Rose. I'm sure most of you are aware of him. He's from UC Irvine. If you point your camera at this QR code, it'll just pull up the show for you. Okay, but I have optimistic news for everyone. Humans are capable of so much. This is a fancy helicopter. This is a human flying this machine. We have the capacity to train humans to navigate complex systems with great ability, even in uncertain conditions and even with deadly consequences. Okay, so you have to fly your helicopter. This is you sitting in your seat, flying your helicopter. And we provide no training. But we do have a system where every so often you go to your helicopterologist and they run some diagnostics. And at the end of that 11-minute meeting, they give you a couple of flying tips. Maybe. No, we would never expect that to work. Now, this is a picture of my mom. I'm including it here because she had AFib surgery about 2.5 months ago. And I bring this up because I'm incredibly appreciative of the healthcare system that we have in many ways. In many ways, it has a very important role. The dialogue around our healthcare system is unfair to the professionals that are in it. And that is in part because the healthcare system is broken in some ways, of course, we all know that, but mostly because it is incomplete. And those are different. So there are things we could fix about the sick care system we have, but this is an incomplete system. Remember, we have to fly our own helicopter. So if we were to redesign a more complete healthcare system from the ground up to meet the needs of today, it would include a robust sick care system like we have. We continue to try to make that better everywhere we can. And an equally robust self-care system. And importantly, the self-care system would not be subjugated under the sick care system. Because when you view all things related to health from a sick care model, then how we live is framed as prevention. It's all oriented around the disease. How do we prevent the disease versus living robustly? Now, notice this visual motif I'm using here. Is this a person getting the labs? Is this a person, healing from an injury? Soccer. How do you get good at soccer? Practice. You practice, you have coaches, they give you good guidance. You then, every day, you're putting it into practice. You're trying to learn new skills, gain new insights, and putting that into practice in real life, in the game. And the ideal time that this system would intervene is not at the first sign of sickness. It would start with the appropriate dedication of time by our schooling system to develop individuals to master the capacity for self-care. But if this was not the schooling that you had growing up, there is still great hope. In fact, anyone at any time can seek ways to deepen their capacities around self-care for themselves and their families. It's truly a lifelong journey anyway. The more that we see society grasp the real connection between health and performance, we undoubtedly will see more and more companies embedding training tools around self-care into their cultures, because what professional organization doesn't want a resilient and high-performing workforce? It would also promote more effective relationships with our experts, with our doctors and other healthcare providers. Because you all know that if you have somebody that is capable of doing more than taking a pill, it's probably more interesting to work with them. You know you can get better outcomes. And I want to share 2 sad stories. This is a picture of me and my dad. I realized the focus is on me and not my father. That is because I didn't have access to all my photos. This is the only one I had. That was good. My dad was the best guy. He really was. He passed away from cancer at age 59, and that was in 2002. At that time, I was doing research on cancer, and of course, I tried to help him, and it was lifestyle and its influence on cancer. So I would sit down and I would talk with him, and I would try to get him to implement some things that I thought could benefit him. And he would listen proudly. He would nod his head, and he didn't make any change at all. Now, I think a lot of that has to do with the relationships. Like, the last people we will probably affect are our family and our friends. I've realized that, and now when family and friends come to me, I usually will refer them to somebody that I trust versus try to handle it myself. It saves some heartache, and it's probably more effective. That's not really the point that I'm making here, though. And I'm going to give you another example, because this is how all of this happened again recently. This is Tony Valance, my best friend, married his daughter, and they were dating since high school. So I really got to know Tony well. I spent a lot of time with him. And he was the best guy you can imagine. Tony was diagnosed with cancer, and he's now passed away too. But when he was first diagnosed, I sat down with Dave and I said, you know, fasting might really help, and I'm going to send you some information on that. It might amplify the therapies that he's going to be doing through his doctor. And after Dave and I chatted for a while, we realized that Tony wasn't going to be able to do it. So this idea that we can not attend to ourselves, to our bodies, and that at one day we'll be able to spring to action probably is not realistic for many. Some, yes. For many, probably not. So even if there were things that could help you at the time of greatest need, you might have bypassed your chance to really be able to implement that if you haven't been focusing on self-care across your whole life. So what's the real issue here? Well, one of the most dangerous parts of this health challenge is just how easy it all seems. It's diet and exercise, right? Oh, maybe sleep. We're going to add that now. Actually, these are categories. And under these categories, there are hundreds of decisions that one could make. So it's not just eat a good diet, get more exercise. There's a lot going on. And because we're not living in a natural environment, where the relationship between the needs of our survival are tightly woven to health behaviors, being outside, movement, etc. And we have a scenario where as environment changes and lifestyle changes with it, the risk to our health goes up. And our need for more self-care training rises with it. And it's probably not even linear, actually. So our training needs to adapt to change. A changing environment. Now let's discuss changing information. Our knowledge on how to take care of the body continues to evolve. These three gentlemen won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2017 for their work unraveling the complex mechanisms around circadian biology. Now, 20 years ago, no popular model of health described or included circadian rhythms or gut microbiome in the model. And we will undoubtedly continue to learn different factors and how important those factors are and how to intervene over the rest of our lives. And we all change over the course of our lives. You're not the same person you were a decade ago. So take a moment and think about who you were a decade ago. Now think about who you were a decade before that. Picture yourself. And now think about who you were a decade before that. Our interests, our needs, motivations, they all change over the lifespan. So we need to develop the capacity to adapt to our own change. So you can see here, it's not like we could even just make sure that everybody takes that one course in college and we'll be fine. It's not just about learning what we know today, but it is really about training the capacity to continue to interact with novelty across the lifespan. Now, there are many different ideas about how to be healthy, but independent of any specific paradigm for whatever self-care subject we're talking about. What are some characteristics of an individual who operates more effectively to take care of themselves in a complex and uncertain world? What could we aim for with our self-care training? To do this, I'd like to offer an acronym, FIT AIM. F is for fluency. Yes, education is important. Uh, there's a lot to say here. Probably talk about it later if you'd like. And the first benefit of education is creating familiarity with the subject. I wasn't aware that that mattered, and now I'm aware of it. But we should strive for more than familiarity. We should actually continue to push people to strive for fluency. And my marker for fluency is, can you sit down and have a conversation with a friend about the ideas of that subject? Now, you don't have to have a PhD on it. This conversation can actually lead to sort of ad nauseum debate, but having a good understanding of the main ideas is valuable so that you can exploit that knowledge for your own benefit. I is for integration. I have a saying, knowing without doing gives you the same results as not knowing. We need to practice taking the big ideas that we learn and weaving them into the practical fabric of our own life. What does this look like around the breakfast table at 7:30 a.m. with your family, right? We have the archetype practices and develops integration skills. T is for tools. Yes, technology is dangerous, but humans are tool-using animals. We can either shun technology altogether, or we can seek dominion over it. And to quote Dr. James Giordano, Chief of Neuroethics at Georgetown University, humans use tools at our disposal not only to increase our survivability, but also to expand our window of flourishing. I love that saying, that's great. We need to be able to do two things with tools. First, we need to learn how to harness technology and come into the modern work life and modern culture, without it sacrificing our own health. And second, we need to learn how to use health promoting, countervailing technologies that are working on our behalf to be more healthy so that we stay human in the digital age. We need to learn how to pick those tools up and use them properly. Next, A is for adaptable. I love the saying, have strong beliefs held weakly. What that means to me is that you've taken the time to become fluent in a subject, but you're willing to evolve your own belief system in the face of new information. I'm sure we all know somebody who refuses to change their position because they learned something and they've stuck to it, even in the face of new information. So that can happen. And the capacity to upgrade your playbook is really critical in a changing world. I is for identity. And identity is an interesting one. We want to promote somebody identifying as a healthy person. And that can be independent of how healthy you actually think you are right now. It's more of an aspiration, what you strive for, what you care about, what you are about. And M is for mindful. And mindfulness has many benefits. I think it's somewhat relegated to, sitting in a cross-legged position and not saying or doing anything for 10 minutes. And that can potentially increase your mindfulness capacity. But the practice of awareness is actually critical in a world that contains many traps that pull you into less than optimal patterns. So you could have learned something really well, develop skills around it, and still a lot of modern life will push you into patterns that will make you defect from your own personal goals. So to close this section, I'd like to say one more thing about this acronym FIT-AIM. Fitness is not just your mile time or how many push-ups you can do, as we all know here, but biological fitness actually speaks to how well suited an organism is to thrive in its niche. And so this acronym is harmonious with the characteristics of the health archetype, or someone who develops self-care skills to thrive in today and tomorrow's world, whatever that world looks like. Okay. Now, in this last section, I want to talk about mastery. It's a term that I've brought up before. We talked about soccer and how to train. We need to provide an environment for growth and development for people. And I'm going to switch gears real quickly. And I'm going to, let's see now. How do I get this? All right. The screen is a bit narrow, but this is Human OS. I call it a personal health mastery platform. And I'm going to walk you through some ideas of it really quickly. These are different programs that we have created. These are designed to help you become fluent in a subject. The how-to guides are meant to then extract the actionable steps from an idea and give you both specific ways to how to interact with that idea in life, including resources and products, including settings on your devices, all of that actually makes it more practical. Think about if you were learning from some sort of talk. You'd have to write down a bunch of ideas about what you thought mattered, and then you'd have to basically do a lot of that thinking on your own if you wanted to then make it more actionable. Doing that for people is a perfect way that a system or an environment could actually make a person more masterful at implementing these ideas. And then we have recipes and courses and all this. And our courses, by the way, are all peer-reviewed by professors and researchers that have experience in that field. And it does not guarantee at all that information is right. But it's a level of credibility and it's a level of oversight that we're willing to then put that under that process so that we can say, okay, can we make this any better before we make it public? And I'm glad that we do that. Now, all of this material interacts with, oops, sorry. Shoot, get rid of this. Here, with an app, and incumbent to the app is interwoven behavioral techniques that are meant to help keep you mindful, make you more aware, more skilled on a daily basis. So it becomes a part of how you inhabit your body on a daily basis. It is with you every step of the way. So that is a little bit of an overview of ways that we have taken an attempt, we've made an attempt to try to create a platform, a mastery platform that helps people live into that archetype. I'm going to mention one other thing. We're rolling out this soon. So the very first thing that I did was create a behavior model called the Loop Model to Sustain Health Behaviors about a decade ago. From there, I worked to develop the app, is how these ideas would get implemented in the world. The next phase was creating content so that the app wasn't this empty state, but had information you could interact with. And this year, we're working on two very big objectives, because not everybody can sit down with this very rich library of material and go through it themselves. It's daunting. It can be daunting. So we're creating a black belt level mastery system. And the reason I like this motif is because we all understand that, if you get you don't get a black belt in a month, right? There's a lot of things in health that are broken down into a 30-day challenge, which can be really good for behavior, but it can also set expectations inappropriately about when you're going to be getting healthy. But a black belt system breaks down little bits that you work on, and as you achieve new levels, you get to a higher place. So here we see it shows you what you've accomplished, and this is different than having listened to, let's say, a bunch of podcasts, which are super valuable, or watching courses, or even going to conferences. But it shows you a track record of how you've engaged with your mastery system. It shows you where you are and what your next level is. And for every level, it shows you what you're going to be working on in that level in order to achieve the next level. And it's not only knowledge-based, but so you get credit for going through courses, and you get credit for interacting with the how-to guides, but it's also application-based. So you also have to achieve certain lifestyle goals a number of times before you can move up. And the next thing that we're working on this year as well is a system that enables other people, coaches, healthcare providers, to interact with patients and people in the system. And so here you could see how your population is doing by getting insights into them and then guiding them and coaching them and encouraging them to continue on their own path so that they can fly their helicopter. And I do, you know, I was a personal trainer early in my life, and I've worked with both, you know, people who had no idea how they just wanted to get fit, but they were really unhealthy. And I've also worked with high-level athletes. And it's fun to work with athletes. They all have their own challenges, and it's all very worthwhile. But working with people that have a goal to really try to get better, it's more fun to work with them. And the healthcare system, as I mentioned, is very encumbered by the fact that you have a limited amount of time. So imagine that world where you could spend 90 minutes with a patient 4 times a year. That's still not how you get really good at soccer. But to have something in between that you could encourage them to stay engaged and then provide better point of care service for whatever condition that they were coming in for, or for whatever, or just keeping them moving along their path towards mastery, is something that we're proud to then bring this year. So I wanted to leave enough time for conversation because I'm very interested to hear your thoughts and take your questions. But I think we all believe that the more the technology normalizes patterns of living that are outside our biological form, the more, the faster we will see the accumulation of damage, and the earlier we will see chronic disease in our society. And if we don't have the self-care skills to live healthfully in the modern world, the destiny of the human body outside its species appropriate fish tank is predictable. So thank you for inviting me here, and I'd really love to hear any thoughts or questions you
have. Thank you, Dan. Someone who's watched your website from when it was Dan's plan all the way to what it is now, and I've used it personally. It's been a really great tool, and I like your new black belt system. It's pretty awesome. But when you were talking, I was also thinking about the Khan Academy structure of building knowledge on previous learning, and like almost like a web.
Yeah.
Right. So you progress from one thing to the other, but you can't get to calculus unless you've done the previous things. Have you set up a system like that, or do you have some kind of progression where people are starting at a basic level and they can't unlock? I mean, because it's right. So this game theory, like unlocking the next thing, is really exciting.
Yeah. Yes. So I thought about that. It's challenging because in the mastery black belt system that we're putting forth, we're creating what I'll consider foundations. The thing that we want to address first is mindset and context, because it's really difficult to know what you're working. If you don't know the global picture, everything can feel like a disjointed set of activities and behaviors. And if you understand the bigger context, you will limit your, you have a greater potential of getting people to limit them seeking a silver bullet, right, over them saying, okay, there's a lot of things that matter, and I'm going to get better results in creating a broad skill set than I am in over-indexing in one thing or trend hopping from one new idea to the next. And we see that. Whatever's popular is what people are doing, and then they shun what had been effective previously versus adding to their skills. We also have to realize that people can come into a system like this with a lot of different needs and goals. So I want to keep the strictness of the system limited to having people go through the foundational system first, but then self-selecting. So if you're interested in weight regulation, you choose that, and you add that as the next couple of courses that you attend to, because that is what's motivating you in the moment. And that can be very different from somebody else. The other thing that we do currently is promote, we have a daily performance program for groups. Performance, as we discussed, is really critical to take that in and realize that how you perform is you have feedback on that, where with your health and sickness, if you do something right now, you might not get great feedback, that it's influencing you, that it's influencing the long-term outcome. So we know from a behavioral perspective, it loses power to actually change your behavior. But because the same behaviors that make you better over time or keep you well over time are the same things that can make you perform well today, if you create a focus on how am I going to perform in the next couple of hours, then you are going to motivate people potentially to actually take advantage of these opportunities better. So when we work with groups, we have a daily performance program, and we focus them on, how does exercise and sleep and light and stress, how do these all interact with performance? And if you think no matter what you want to accomplish, there is a performance element to it. So I call it this triumvirate of performance. You have to perform at the behaviors that help your physiology perform better so that you can perform better in your life, right? So you have to, whatever that might look like. So even if you want to lose weight, there is a performance element to that. And you have to perform at those things in order to get the results you want. So that's a long-winded answer to the sort of rigidity of the system. One other comment that I'll make is that this mastery idea is not meant to probably create anybody that is as knowledgeable about health as you guys are, because it is your career. But imagine you are a lawyer or you're a financial, you do financial planning for somebody. Can you create mastery around a broad skill set? And that mastery doesn't mean that you, again, have PhD level knowledge, but it means you understand some of the core ideas well enough to exploit them in your life. So that's, if you want to take that a step higher, you want to take that, go farther with it. If your personal interest now means you want to learn more and go deeper, there's a lot of opportunities to do that. But this is really about creating a broad skill set that is not super deep, but also what you've learned is structured in a way that somebody's focusing your attention on things that are, from an expert's perspective, probably the top things to know for that subject now. Yeah.
I have a couple questions. One is the age range of people who tend to use this. I work primarily with older people, and talking to people about meditation apps they can do on their phone. Most people like something like Headspace, which tells them what to do, and it's on their computer more than on their phone. So I'm just curious if either 20-year-olds or 70-year-olds really use this. And then my second question is, I'm curious the idea of incorporating healthy optimization within a workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. So, remember the first one I got?
Age.
Yeah, okay, yeah, thanks.
Interaction with technology. I imagine 30 to 50-year-olds do this, but 20 and 70-year-olds.
Yeah, we do have a very balanced range of people using the system. There is a technological barrier. So if you can't interact with technology comfortably, it's a limit. But then, because you get to get in there and choose, we're working with the Buck Institute of Aging, for instance, now. In fact, they are using Human OS to promote wellness within their own community. And my goal is to create a better aging program in collaboration with them. So we develop a deeper relationship where they use the tools for their own wellness, and they also populate the materials in Human OS so that it's more broadly accessible for folks. And they've come around. They're an institution that has over 200 scientists that really are focusing on the biochemistry and the deep science of aging. But they realize that the most powerful interventions that we have today are lifestyle, and that a really serious age mitigation pill is probably 40 years off or more. So one of the reasons that they're so interested in collaborating is because they are exclusively funded by philanthropists who care about the field. It's hard to say, well, it's going to be 40 years off before you have anything that you can benefit from. And that's not true. They can benefit from this stuff now. And again, it all seems so insidiously easy, right? It's just like, it's just, eating the right diet. Well, we know that the science that goes into this is, it's deep. So to bring that all into a program that walks you through the main ideas so that you're knowledgeable enough is great. And then the other thing that I would say is human OS is more like Photoshop than it is Microsoft Paint. And I use this dichotomy to say that there are some tools that you can sit down and interact with, and they're very easy. So let's maybe say Fitbit. You put it on your wrist. If you can go through the onboarding, then it's time and steps, and it's very simple. A lot of public health tools have to keep the bar so low for what they do, because we know that a lot of people won't be able to go farther if it's more complex. But we know that professionals that use Photoshop can do amazing things with it, but it requires an investment and it requires time. Some people are autodidacts, they can learn themselves. Other people need support systems and coaches. And that's why we're building in that coaching layer. And I see this as the range of coaches from a concierge who doesn't necessarily have expertise in health, but is really excited to work with, they love health and they want to work to help others be healthy in their lives. And so they become expert at walking you through the system and helping you get familiar with it. In fact, I think of human OS itself as a health skill. The more you learn it, the more you know it, the more it can benefit you. So that's the first idea, is that we really do need to add that coaching layer to reach a broader group of people that we want to reach. With corporations, we've now done we've done pilots with about 5 or 6 groups, including Workday, sales, and a group of shift workers in the Netherlands that's current, the Buck Institute, a group we call JocoFit, which is Johnson County government employees. And we've learned a lot. One thing that we learned is getting people onto a team, creating a defined window of 4 weeks where they have a runway of what they're supposed to do is effective. In fact, I wasn't sure what the government employee adoption was going to look like. We had people go through every single course in our curriculum, not just some people, but entire teams were averaging over 110 watched lessons in the month. So all of our courses are broken down into 2 3-minute lessons. Their goal was to watch 10 lessons in the month, to keep it really low to see how they did. And they killed it. The lowest team had 70 watched lessons on average. That was positive. There's more work to do there. One thing when you have a challenge is when the challenge is over, when you cross the finish line, great, I'm done, I'm gonna move on. So my ideal scenario in a real life scenario would be, let's have a moment of focus for these first 4 weeks, but then let's keep your goals so that you have 1 watched course in a month, something that's really achievable, right? It's only like maybe 9 lessons or so. And then getting them right into that personal mastery system, and then using coaches to then keep them on their journey and path.
And was this part of their actual work day?
So everything that I create, I think, how does it fit into that practical fabric of life? Example is Intune training. It stands for integrative and opportunistic training. And the idea is, do we have to consolidate all of our movement that is more than walking into a workout? Workouts are great, they're valuable, but can you actually have a system where we are encouraging bits of movement into your day, like we know hunter-gatherers did, where they're lifting, carrying, climbing, throwing. So in that program with physical activity, we show how you can use human OS to promote within-day physical activity. So you finish an email, you do some push-ups, or you do some lunges, whatever. Now that kind of depends on the permissiveness of a person's environment. If you're in a suit, it might not. Your environment might constrain you from interacting with that concept, even if you would like. But then again, that's why we can't be at 10 o'clock, do 10 push-ups. It doesn't really work. Ultimately, you need to be the driver of that car, or that helicopter. And so you have to figure out, okay, where do I fit this in? Every day might be a little bit different, but I know, in that course, for example, in the daily performance program, we show how promoting blood flow through physical activity is a way to improve cognitive performance. So everything is tethering back to their, like, hey, do you want to do really well at your job? Do you have that big meeting? We go from, shoot, I don't have enough time to work out, to I can't afford not to because I need to perform at the best. And that facilitating that mindset is really critical.
And because that person in the suit could sit and be mindful for 3 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. You've got this range of different things you could do to be healthy.
Yeah.
Some of it might be box breathing. It could be taking a walk, right? It's a lot. You need to know, how do I feel? What's right for me? What does my situation call for? Great. I've got some tools and ideas that promote that. And that's where we need to get to. Yeah.
Sorry. So using one of your points in your acronym today, adaptable. So how are you staying adaptable with your knowledge and what you're doing personally to stay up to date with current changing knowledge, and then how do you incorporate that in what you do with your system?
Yeah, so one thing we're doing is always coming out with new information. So when I defined that phase of human awareness, we're focusing on content development. That doesn't mean that it's done, but we will continue to roll out new content and adjust the content that we have up there. If we learn that something is modified, we will be more than happy to change it and point to the fact that, hey, our knowledge on this has changed. Here's what changed. Here's our new recommendation, and really call that out. So that's one idea.
Modeling something great for people to incorporate into their life.
Right, exactly. And then for me, I try to test new ideas that I think have merit. We were chatting right before, so Juve sent me a red light biomodulation device. It was something that I like. I'm very interested in the topic of light. I didn't know much about photobiomodulation. I did a podcast with Michael Hamblin from Harvard, who's really one of the leaders in that space. We had a real fun conversation. I learned more. And so now I am testing to see if I can incorporate that into my life. And I actually have. I stand in front of it in the morning and I put on an audiobook. It's sort of two birds, one stone. It's become something that I feel I can continue with. Other devices that I've, for instance, I had Eric Nofsinger on the podcast, former president of the Sleep Research Society. He has a device that cools the forehead that helps with insomnia. It's based off of a lifetime of his work. I don't have insomnia, but I thought on the show, we speculated, could this actually be used to get you better sleep? So if you cool the forehead prior to going to bed, do you get deeper sleep? What about if you wake up in the middle of the night? Can it help you go back to sleep by cooling the mind and slowing down the metabolism in the frontal cortex? Well, his research has shown that he can do that, but I have not found that I've been able to implement that in a really regular way. So I like to get firsthand experience with things and then not make a determination for what you are capable of doing because of what I was capable of doing, but just saying, here's the information, here's maybe my experience with it. So, it'll be an evolution for sure. And I feel like it's important to continue to try new stuff without sacrificing what you've built your health practice on. So are you entirely giving everything up so that you're doing something new, or can you add new things into your practice, your health practice, so that it continues to evolve in a way that is increasingly efficacious? That's my perspective. Yeah.
Sounds great. And I'm just wondering, is the price point that's been set for this going to make it accessible to lower middle class people, or is this exclusively going to be largely the realm of the upper middle class, people of means?
So my personal mission is to create high value, low cost solutions for people. Human OS is a subscription. It's $9 a month. For groups, it's $14.99 a month. They get additional services and the corporation is paying for them. Eventually, I'd love to have an assistance program because I don't want there to be any barriers for folks to be able to access this type. In fact, if a very wealthy philanthropist came along and said, let's just make this free, I would be happy to do that. But I also realize that the health of the business will help the tool be really effective. So I feel that that's a fair price point for what we give. Yeah.
Well, it also triggers buy-in too. I mean, if it was free, I don't know the use, right? So it's actually.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Yes.
I'm curious about the motivations and populations that are using it right now, both whether you've mentioned organizations, like fortunately, are you seeing more individuals who are coming versus more organizations who are wanting to meet their goals by bringing their people? And in both cases, are they starting from a point where they're already pretty health conscious and they're like really into optimizing, or are these people who are starting at a pretty low level?
It's a great question, and it's both, luckily. And I mean, I say luckily because that is absolutely the stated intention, is to not just serve one population. But you can imagine that the Ideal Weight program is going to serve a very specific population. The Daily Performance program could affect everybody positively if you can appreciate that mindset and it motivates you. We've talked about adding additional, more specific programs around like pre-diabetes and cardiovascular health, et cetera. So I want to continue to create specific tools for specific needs. In that range, we have people that are looking to optimize. I kind of look at what are the motivations for somebody to take action on their health. And on one half of this spectrum, you have people that are looking to optimize performance. That could be physical performance or mental performance. You have people that are looking to get pregnant or anything around pregnancy. I want to get pregnant, I am pregnant, or I have young kids, so I'm looking to do right, I'm motivated because I want to do right with my family. Or you have people that want to lose a little bit of weight. So not, not 100 pounds, but maybe 10 or 15 pounds. I see that all as lifestyle orientation. On the other half of that, there might be disease orientation. And the focus there is partially driven out of fear. I have this risk in my family. I have these blood markers that indicate that I could have this condition soon, or I have the condition and I want to do better now. And, you got to try to meet people where they're at and then hopefully get them into the most effective mindset, regardless of where they're coming from. And that'll be a continual challenge to do that. One thing we want to do is create a recommendation engine. So you come in and you watch one, let's say, course, then you are given a really good next step. So it's right there for you. We've done some of the thinking. Here's the best next step for you to take. And I've also wanted to make HumanOS something that is doesn't require power usership, right? You don't have to use all of it in order for it to be effective. If you just come for, let's say, the recipes, then you can do that for a while. And hopefully the system will invite you and encourage you to take part in more health modifying parts of the tool in time. That is one of the goals. But if it only worked if you had a device integrated and you were using everything, the amount of people that we could affect is really narrow.
Are the consumers finding you directly, or is it more by referral?
So the only marketing we do is the podcast, and no other. And that'll change over time. But what we're doing right now is we're not in the sales and marketing phase. We're working with select clients, like corporations, who are focusing on that. We have a limited group of people. And then this year, I really want to start to work with coaches and create tools that they find useful so that they can use this as a part of their offer, right? So that they become a part of the HumanOS ecosystem and they can do better with HumanOS. And I think that is the ultimate, where you might have somebody who's the best deadlift coach in the world, and they're going to be the point of care for all sorts of questions that a person gets about circadian rhythms, et cetera. And that this empowers them to continue to deliver really high content across all of the different things that do matter, even though the person came to them for the best instruction on how to do the deadlift. So that's, I think that's where things will really shine. This gets out there. Yeah.
How do you know it's working?
So that's a great question. And that is actually the fourth part of the model. So the behavior model is, why should I do it? How do I do it? Am I doing it? Is it working? And the is it working piece is really a challenging one. And it's one that we invest we invest a lot in society, diagnostics of sorts. And this can be either getting some deeper insights into the body. And then let's say you're looking at blood markers. Are you familiar with blood markers? Okay, so
I have a passing.
Okay, yeah. And then you can see, what is my status and what is my trajectory? So where do I sit now? How does that possibly compare to population data, and where does that place me? And then what is my trajectory over time? Am I staying in a good space, or am I getting to a better place than I need to? But then there's also what I really like, I think is the combination of objective and subjective data, and getting people to become better listeners to their body and themselves. And a great way to also, a great thing to also focus people on is just their physical performance. it's hard, and then maybe even mental performance. I have a bunch of ideas that I'd like to institute there that might give you good feedback into how you're actually performing mentally. But that'll be a little while before we can implement that. And then, for the blood work, I'm very interested in that too. Some important challenges come up with blood work, as you know. Let's say, if those markers and those values are based off of an average population, and you change to, let's say, a ketogenic diet, are you familiar with ketogenic diet? then what do those values that you're getting, do they indicate pathology if they're different, or do they indicate a new stability point that is also reflective of health? And there's more work to be done there. So, that's a place that we might partner.
There's a really interesting paper, because I'm also really interested in making this accessible, and like not everybody should have to buy a blood test X number of times a year to track their health.
Yeah.
And like, can you get good enough from free data essentially? And
yeah.
Some guys used subjective health questionnaires and got a biological age prediction model that was pretty close to like the Horvath and Levine kind of methylation type. So like, there's free data you could potentially collect and still get some very cool like tracking over time in terms of that kind of stuff.
And it's a lot of cool stuff is coming. Aging AI looks at
taking a picture of your face.
And it's pretty good. And we're going to see more and more of that. I would like to implement best practices there versus at this point, maybe be like really innovate in that area, because it's just not, currently it's outside of our expertise, but I think it is important, right? Because if you go from, I watch some information and I have belief that it could offer value. That's the why. I have the skills that enable me to then try it on myself. This stuff, I call them mundane but meaningful, the sleep, the steps. It's boring, but you could be completely knowledgeable and skilled, and then life gets in the way, right? So 7 months later, you're just getting pulled back into the tractor beam of modern life. But can this help you get another 700 steps a day, or go to bed on time more often? That stuff, I think, is super valuable. And then lastly, can you give people an indication that it is actually working for them? And if you can, I think you really tighten up that loop, because you then can inspire faith that, all right, there's a lot of different ideas out there, but this is working for me, so I'm going to stick with it. So I'm really favorable. I really like that fourth step. We haven't implemented it yet. It's coming. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. It sounds like sort of related to what you talked about, friction, the friction in that process. I continually struggle with friction.
Yeah.
I have a Fitbit, but I hate wearing the damn thing, because I just don't want to have to look at my laptop ever again. Like, I already have to look at my laptop enough already. I just want to relax or run, another thing. If I'm not running, I can sort of feel it. However, I'm also not really reaching the sort of health goals that I want to do. So perhaps, as we age, perhaps we need to be more explicit about paying more attention to doing that thing. So what is the number one thing, or can you talk a little bit more about friction and what's the first thing that needs to happen to overcome?
That was my second question.
Yeah.
Wait, you've already asked like 5.
That's the last one.
So in AHS 2014, I gave a talk on behavior, and in there I said you could either aim to lower friction so much that you get more people into the fold, or you can raise the disengagement threshold by helping people be more motivated because they see the potential, right? When you show people the potential of having a better life, that living more into your own goals for yourself, in everything that you care to do well. When I work with the SEALs, I say, all right, what do you care to do well? And are you willing to then take some steps that are completely within your grasp to make sure that everything you care to do well, you're doing better? And that's why I love starting with a broader philosophy talk than just getting right into the details. Now, another thing that I want to mention, because this group is here with a really staunch appreciation of ancestral health, is that the overriding idea here is we're trying to help people live more naturally in the modern world. And that can sometimes mean the rejection of tech. Sometimes it can mean using tech to actually do a little bit better. And so, going back to friction, The other thing that you can do, for instance, is like we institute friction in our courses. I mean, it's not the purpose of it, but our courses are broken into little lessons. And in between the lessons, there's a quiz. The reason we have the quiz is not because you're being tested. It's giving you a moment to think about what you just learned. And that has been shown to facilitate learning when you do that. But it's friction, right? Because we're used to putting something on in the car and just going for a drive, and it's infotainment. And that is useful too, to become more familiar with something. What we want to do more is institute humor into those quizzes. So you're looking forward to that, right? Your friction is now something that you're, oh gosh, what silly, fun quiz, how am I going to laugh this time? And that is one way to just make engaging with the system a little bit more fun. So that's one idea that we've had. So yeah, raising the disengagement threshold by making people more knowledgeable and giving them context, and then trying to make their interactions with the system more pleasant. Right now, the site's kind of slow. And so over this next year, we want to try to, make it really, really, really fast. And that's going to take some time. But all that's friction really matters, right? It really matters. So you got to address all of it.
I mean, presumably, like immediate feedback, though, like, wow, I've just been doing this dietary change for the past few days. I automatically feel better. That will help you then overcome the friction immediately. But some of this stuff is more long-term. You actually have to really believe in the benefit more long-term. It's hard for humans. Humans never had to be really involved. The psychological mechanisms that help us think about things in that way. Right? Like I said, we just live in the environment.
Yeah.
And the way we interacted with the ancestral environment, it just kept us. There would have been all these negative feedbacks, that would keep us within around. So
there's the theory of self-determination, and it looks at different aspects of motivation. And when you start with somebody, offering external rewards can get somebody who has not been active in engaging with some health idea to be more active. But external rewards experience a lot of vulnerability. That, let's say I offer you $100 to go through the course in a month or whatever. Then if we're going to do it the next month, you actually have to raise that to $120 for that level of reward, external reward, to have the same degree of motivation. But the black belt mastery system is, think about how your identity can change over the course of that if done right. The best thing that you can do is to facilitate the identity of health, where you're not going out for a run so you get the $5 gift certificate. You're going out for the run in the rain, and despite all really unpleasant conditions, because that is a part of who you are. And you are living, you're not doing homework, you're living into self-actualization when you engage in your health that way. And so not only can we teach people information over time, but we can also further ingrain the identity that you've become a real health expert, self-expert. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so a lot of people who are doing life coaching or coaching generally work by that model of, thought creates emotion, creates action, creates result, and then you reverse engineer that kind of think. You thought you need to think.
Yeah.
Like, I am a healthy person who loves running, for example.
Yeah.
And then you just have to keep doing that so that becomes who you are.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I don't know if you're utilizing that.
And motivational interviewing, I would love to do more of that. Why are you here? Getting people to actually think about why they're there, right, is really good, and what they care about. Tethering why doing this thing matters to you in your life specifically, and to make that stand out, vivid, visceral, emotional. Those really that's a very powerful behavioral modification technique. Yeah. Yes.
So how do you personalize it in a way that puts things in a hierarchy for patients or people, clients? The things that are going to get the most mileage, so for instance, I'm sitting down with somebody and I'm taking their history. If they tell me they're drinking 4 to 5 beers a night, I'm not talking to them about a lot of other stuff. Or if they say I'm drinking 6 sodas a day, that's what I'm focusing on. The first thing I'm just going to say, let's just tackle that.
Yeah.
I think there is the risk of, if you start talking to them about, well, you need to exercise, you need to meditate, you need to get to bed on time, you need to eat healthfully, and all these things, they kind of, the most important thing, like the giant lever that's going to make the giant change in their health, gets neglected because they're thinking about all this other stuff, which are little buttons on the machine of health. And the big lever they're not pulling.
Yeah.
So how do you like personalize that when patients are going through your program?
That is a really challenging question, and it's why I'm so optimistic about allowing experts, coaches, and physicians to interact with the system to make that choice with the person. Because sometimes addressing the greatest lever specifically would get you the most value, but it's not the best path for that individual, because they don't want to give up their Coca-Cola. But if you can get them doing something else that they can do that you never know unless you were talking to that person and you saw a little spark in their eye about, I want to do that. Let them start there, build some confidence and feel like, hey, I'm doing this now. And then maybe you address that downstream, right? Like with, and that's very complex. So I think the more our system tried to build that into its algorithms, the less successful we would be. I think we create effective tools that then you let humans interact within it, and the technology is amplifying those efforts, but it's not trying to replace the humans. It's just making your efforts more effective. Yeah.
All right, I'll jump in because
I'm here.
Use his knowledge as he sits and tries to eat and enjoy the sunshine. I think we've been putting off Chris's talk for long enough. So if you just take like 5 minutes while I change computer setup, and then we'll come back. Yeah. Oh yeah, sure. Oh, can you not see it?
Well, there's people in the way.
Okay. Next time was awesome.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah. Hey, is this one yours?
Yes.
Okay.